everyone. Welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today I am here, obviously not in my regular studio and obviously not alone. We have Joy Backless Cruz.
Hello.
Which how do you say your name?
Backless Cruz.
Backless Cruz. Okay, we were saying off air, you were like, oh, sometimes people will say it's Joy Behar, like Google will try to autocorrect.
And then it says backlash.
Oh my gosh. I would just be like furious. It's okay. People still don't know how to spell my name. It's like an impossible name. Where was I? I was just trying to get coffee this morning at the airport.
Okay.
Dude, I was looking at the lady. I was like, my name is Chrissy. And they asked for your name, right?
Yeah.
It was like I was speaking a foreign language. I'm like, okay.
The amount of Starbucks orders I've gotten with J-O-I.
How? Like, that's not a normal.
No, it's on purpose. I know it.
It's such a simple name. I'll never forget one of my favorite stories of all time, and we still don't let my mom live this down to this day. So we were in Dallas Starbucks, and she said her name is Carolyn, or Carol, she'll say. And they just start calling out, Gerald? Yes. I'm like, how? How do you look at this woman, this like
Gerald.
5'5" blonde woman, and go, that's a Gerald.
Hey, it
She's
happens
probably
these days.
Gerald. Oh my gosh, so dumb. So we were talking off air about like what you would call yourself, and you said conservative commentator. Well, like, what does that all entail? How'd you get your start in all of this?
Well, I'm entirely new to politics. I thought my entire life I was going to be a doctor. My parents are doctors. I was put in a pre-medical high school, and then I flew halfway across the country to be in this 8-year undergrad to medical school program.
Cool.
I have since dropped out. I finished undergrad. I didn't go to medical school. But all my friends are there, so everyone in my life is medical. And I was so miserable. And then my first year of college, COVID hit. So we all got sent home. It was a big deal. And I was super liberal at the time. I voted for Biden. I was marching with BLM. And I was one of the first people to move back to campus. So I was alone. Like, I was living in solitude for like a month and a half. And so I was sad and lonely, as one would be.
Yeah.
And so I fell down the YouTube rabbit hole, as people do, and I stumbled across...
Did you get red-pilled by YouTube?
You have no idea. The first thing that got me was I stumbled across Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter.
Yeah.
And she had just tons of autoimmune issues and health problems, and she solved pretty much everything, like hardcore issues, like rheumatoid arthritis, with a carnivore diet. And
were you learning that in school?
No. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but most people go through medical school without ever taking one nutrition class.
Yep.
It's amazing. And I was a nutrition minor at the time, too. So I was in nutrition classes, but
we still weren't learning this stuff?
No, it was based on the food pyramid.
Oh, the food pyramid is crap.
And Coca-Cola sponsored the nutrition program at my school.
Where was this?
Drexel.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of CIA operatives there, too. So that's a whole nother thing. But at the time, I was raw vegan. And I had a lot of the same autoimmune issues that she did. So I figured, I have nothing to lose. I might as well give this a shot.
Wait.
So,
really quick. How old were you when you were diagnosed with these autoimmune diseases?
Young. 11.
Oh my gosh. 11 years old?
Yeah.
And you, at what age did you go into the vegan diet, and who told you to do that?
I had been playing with veganism, vegetarianism on and off, which is really hard for me because I'm from Texas. And man, they entice you with barbecue. But my allergist recommended it to me starting around like 12, 13 years old. So I had been doing like plant-heavy food, grain-heavy food. Come to find out later, I was allergic to almost everything I was eating. Like, even still today, I've done an elimination diet and I can eat a lot more than I used to, but I still can't eat carrots or apples, all things that were in my diet every single day, every single meal. So no wonder that was happening to me. And so as not even a month into the carnivore diet, my skin cleared. I had bad cystic acne. You could not see my skin.
Oh my gosh, I'm wondering if the audience can see, like, in the video, do you have carnivore earrings?
I do. I have meat earrings.
I'm like, if you're in the listening audience, guys, you've got to come and see the video. Is it the best quality today? No, but oh my gosh, these earrings are so cute.
Thank you.
So this really like cured you. Oh my gosh, one of them's ground beef and one of them's like a
yes.
steak. So
I'm a supporter. I love the carnivore diet. But it almost cured me. With less than a month, cystic acne went away, rashes went away, eczema went away, brain fog lifted. I was a different person.
Yeah.
And I was involved in the medical industry, and no one told me that. In fact, I was told my whole life that veganism was the healthiest option and the most environmental.
You were learning that in school?
What learned in school, just off the street. That was like just the popular narrative that everyone had been saying, but nobody told me otherwise. It's amazing. And so that really interfered with, my opinion of authority. And just figuring out what else did I not know. And so continuing down the YouTube rabbit hole, I found conservative commentators that looked a lot like me, like you, like other girls, like Amala Benobi and Isabel Brown and Brett Cooper. Yeah. And what was amazing about that was not the content so much, because it was points that I've heard before from people that, looked like my dad. And I have a really big issue with people who say that, identity politics is stupid and has no place, which it is dumb, but to say it has no place is just a misunderstanding of like human nature, because we're a social species and we identify with the opinions of people who we consider our in-group, and we determine our in-group through visual cues. So if you look like me, you talk like me, you dress like me,
I'm more attracted to you, I'm more interested in what you have to say.
Well, that's my in-group, and I'd never ever heard someone of our demographic say what you were saying.
Oh my gosh, guys, she thinks I'm in her demographic.
It really was.
She thinks I'm young. It's fine.
It was amazing to me. I'd never heard that before. So it was almost like permission to think something different. And from there, I went crazy. I started reading everything from like,
oh God,
Bradbury. I know, seriously, but everything from like Bradbury to Nietzsche to like professors like Steven Pinker. And at the same time, I was doing the sciences. I'm a physiologist. And so I started looking at history and politics and culture through a biological and human nature lens. And from there, I kind of started to reject the Republican Democrat narrative, because it's so dynamic. It's changed so much over time.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look like it was even 5 years ago.
Absolutely not. But what is a constant narrative throughout the human story has been populism versus totalitarianism. And it's hard not to notice that right now there is an encroaching authoritarianism, globalism happening. And the danger of that is, whether it's left or right, socialism, communism, or fascism, the common theme is equality. Everyone gets equally nothing.
Very true.
And so I'm in this space yapping into a camera not because I just wake up ready to talk about the border or taxes or like the gossip in the different political campaigns. I don't care. Yeah. But I want more than anything in the world to be a mom. And if I'm going to bring a child into this world, I want them to have a fighting chance at having control over their life. I don't want them to have a predestined future. So I fight for the West by talking into a camera, because I want something more for them. And I will do anything to make that happen. And I talk about it because more people who realize, well, there's more of us than there is the authoritarians.
Yeah.
So, we fight darkness by bringing it into the light.
You also never know who you're going to impact one day, too.
No.
There are a lot of people that do what we do, in a sense, but you just never know that your video at that right time is going to hit somebody different than the
And what if it does? What if it hits one more person?
Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's what building kingdom is about. Why wouldn't building a movement be similar?
Absolutely.
It's obviously not as important, but in some sense, it's the same thing. But for time purposes, I do want to get into our docket and get into all the stories for today. Oh my gosh, no. I asked you to explain your story, and I'm glad that everybody now has a taste of joy. It's awesome. So for our docket today, we have an individual who is serving a lifelong sentence in California, who got gender surgery funded by the taxpayers thanks to policies implemented by Kamala Harris. A former Bachelorette star admitted he faked being a transgender woman to expose gender ideology. And we're going to keep you updated on a bunch of the legal changes in voting standards in both Texas and Georgia. We're going to get into all of that. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Today's show is brought to you by Based, my merch line. If you didn't know this already, I'm an independent creator, and the best way to support this show is by purchasing my merch line that represents your views. Instead of just asking you guys for donations to fund my independent journalism, My business partner and I created a line of merch called Based Apparel. Based means you are the opposite of woke. It means you're based in logic, you're based in truth, you're based in facts. You get it. Head over to basedinlogic.com to check out our latest apparel. My personal favorite right now is the conspiracy theorist hat. And remember, when you buy merch, you are directly supporting me and this show. And when you get your apparel, please be sure to tag me on Instagram so I can repost you. So let's do our first story. So transgender, this guy is called the Yacht Killer. He's like infamous, I guess, in California. And he's serving a life sentence, like I kind of teed up, for murder, obviously. And he is now getting taxpayer-funded chest surgery, I guess, a bunch of different surgeries. So I'm going to read this article. It's coming to us from the Free Beacon today. Sitting on death row in 2009, John Jacobson Jr., sounds like John Jacob Jingleheimer. Sorry. I know I'm supposed to take these things seriously, but I just can't. Anyway,
it's hard.
I know. He's been sitting on death row since 2009, cordially known as the Yacht Killer, and he talked about murdering a married couple named Thomas and Jackie Hawk to obtain money for a sex change surgery. So the intention behind this was to do the sex change surgery in the first place. Yeah, so nice. 5 years earlier, Jacobson lured the Hawks onto their own boat, off the California coast, tied them to the anchor, and threw them overboard before grabbing a beer from the fridge and starting to fish. This person sounds like a psycho. Jacobson then told ABC he wanted this specific surgery, and he knew 100% that he wanted the surgery. And then, what was this? This is 2009. Okay, now fast forward to 2024. He then got that taxpayer-funded surgery. I guess the Washington Free Beacon reached out to him, and he said, I did receive gender-affirming surgery and breast augmentation on April 5th of 2023, and he is now awaiting a transfer to a women's prison.
Good.
And you go good, great. Everything's going exactly
as
I
you
thought
said
it was
breast
gonna be.
augmentation. Did he have a vaginoplasty?
I mean, it says gender-affirming care and breast augmentation, so I would assume
right.
But I
like that would be something you'd want to know if he's going into a female prison.
Yeah,
you know?
Because we've heard constantly, I believe the Independent Women's Forum, which is a women's organization, I say women's in quotes because they like believe that all rights are women's rights instead of just like single-handedly pushing us to the corner and saying that abortion is our only right. But Independent Women's Forum did a whole expose on how these California prisons have so many transgender prisoners in there, and they're biological men assaulting biological women in these facilities. It's like wild. But yeah, he's on the wait list, and I'm sure that that's going to happen.
Good. Yeah, and what was it, like 2 years ago, there was a case of a trans woman who impregnated 2 fellow female prisoners. Like, it's happening all the time.
Yeah, and the problem is that the transgender advocates that are normal, and there are a difference. Like, there are people that are actually kind of normal. I talked to one of them, her name, biological male, now believes a woman, Dr. Erica, lives in the Berkeley area and did a documentary that I did one time. She was awesome. Like, I mean, just a wonderful person, but seems to be on the right side of history when it comes to children and transing children and generally all of that, but then is very much in favor of biological men being in women's prisons. And I'm like, I don't know how reasonable people square that circle. I really don't.
I don't know.
I know. No. But this is also one of the, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's like one of the so many stories, I'm sorry, I'm like hitting my mic. One of so many stories that we've heard of like California people being screwed over by Kamala Harris. And that's like the point I want to hone in on, is that this is a California thing, right? There are so many families we've heard. There was one specific guy or a woman whose child had sickle cell anemia. And then the child was so sick, couldn't go to school. And Kamala Harris then imprisoned the mother because, because of truancy. Yes. And I'm like, I'm wondering in my mind, I really want to get your take on this. Is like, this story, I think, moves the needle in communities, right? Like, you hear this, that like, oh my gosh, Kamala funded something that will give a transgender individual access to the surgery that they ultimately wanted and murdered for. Right? That's going to change the needle in that area of California where people are actually impacted, because that's how testimony works for the most part. Do you think this could move the needle on a national scale?
I think it might, particularly for women, because women tend to lean a little bit more left, especially unmarried women. But what are women biologically designed to care about? Well, children and other women. if you don't protect children and other women and you're making a huge display of that and bragging about it, well, that might make some women kind of blink, blink, turn their heads. What's going on?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
I can see that. I just feel like when there's some of these stories, like, I would anticipate that because the trans issue is just such a bomb of an issue, I would anticipate that a story about, like, a single Black mom whose child had borderline cancer getting put in jail for doing what was best for that child. If that wasn't nationally moving the needle, I don't know if an issue that is so censored on so many platforms, like, you know, it's just, I don't know if this will nationally move the needle, but I'm interested to see.
I don't think the problem is the story itself. It's that it's not getting the airtime that it deserves. So the story would move the needle. Like, I was talking to, most of my friends are liberal because that's the demographic I hang around.
Yes.
Understandable. But she was watching the presidential debate. We were hanging out the next night and she kind of laughed. She was like, it was really weird that Donald Trump just mentioned that, you know, trans inmates are getting surgeries. Like, that was like crazy.
The only thing that he said that was true in like a 5-minute span.
I know. I was like, no, that's happening. Like, I can name names off the top of my head. One that comes to mind is Christina Lusk. But she didn't know it was happening. If people know that these things are happening, they're going to think about it, and that's going to affect them. But it's being hidden, and it's a lot less with X, I think.
Yeah, no, X does a good job. It's so interesting because X is such an interesting platform for like pictures and social like articles and whatnot. But it's really interesting to see what builds traction. Sometimes I think a lot of people have their hearts and minds changed by video. That's why I do a lot of video. But a lot of videos, unless you are like Tucker Carlson, obviously, it's a notable exception. Videos don't like do as well as pictures and long form, which is kind of counterintuitive to modern day consumption of media.
Yeah, true.
But I see what you're saying. I think obviously it's an underreported story. That's why we're talking about it here on this show.
That's why this is important.
And it's problematic that it is. I mean, I think that's kind of always been the general take of this show is like, oh my gosh, why are we talking about these things? I say it all the time, Joy, I would freaking love to be out of a job because people would just talk about those. How nice would that be? I know. All right, okay, let's move on to our next story. So I'm going to tee up a video for you because this is quite wild. Oh my gosh. So the former Bachelorette star, his name is Josh Seiter, he admitted he faked being a trans woman for 5 months to expose how ridiculous gender ideology is. Let's roll the clip.
The thought of themselves being women. And I think a lot of trans women are turned on at the thought of themselves being women. Guess what? It doesn't magically make them women. It doesn't mean we have to accept that they're women. They are simply men turned on at the thought of themselves being women. That's great. We live in a free country. You can do whatever you want, but don't make your fetish my truth. I don't have to accept it. To go to the second part of your question, how did I come up with this? I was talking with some friends and we said, this is patently false. Men do not magically become women. I said, let's look at the medical literature and what it says. It says that trans people don't have to transition, don't have to have gender dysphoria, don't have to get surgery, and don't have to get hormones. If they feel they are a different gender than their bio-sex, then they are trans and they are valid. And I said, understandably, this is ridiculous. Then I can present exactly how I am, and I can be trans and valid if I say that's my gender identity. And so I said, let me prove how ridiculous this is using reductio ad absurdum by being trans for 5-6 months, and hopefully people will understand then how ridiculous this is.
I definitely understand how ridiculous it is.
Okay, can I just say, I fucking called it, okay? I called this shit so long ago. I was asked to go on, I was asked to go on the news channel. I won't say which one. I was asked to go on the news to talk about this. I saw so many people taking this as like clickbait and like posting it everywhere. And I just knew from the moment I saw this that this was bullshit. I don't know what was inside me. And now a lot of people are claiming like, oh, they're doing what I'm doing right now. Like, oh, I was right about it the whole time. And I'm like, damn it, this is why I should always post how I feel. I need to be more bold in my posting. Mostly it's just laziness. I'm like, I don't really care that much to say this. But no, for real, I was really never talked about this on the show. I even had in the queue, I had a lot of people and story seekers, you guys out there. I had you guys were sending this to me. And I was like, nah, I'm going to wait. So Bachelorette contestant, he was like very popular on the show, proceeds to pretend to be trans for 5 months. And yeah, he shouldn't get into acting because he wasn't that good in my opinion. But I think he proved a very valuable point. And it's that it's not possible to tell who is telling the truth and who is not.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you have been exposed to any of this when you were like in school or any of these people that go through this, but I think it's incredibly disappointing that the LGBT community, I'm just going to say the T community, was just so behind this guy without any thought.
Yeah, and there were a lot of members of the T community that I knew in school that were absolutely behind him. No questions.
That's so crazy.
And then silence when the news was revealed.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, I haven't seen like the big kumbaya.
No take-backs.
No, just like upset at them, not upset at themselves, upset at him for doing such a thing. It's
right.
Like, no, I think he's exposing something that's quintessential to what we've understood this movement to be, is that it can be anything and you can say or whatever it's just like, how do I say it politely without getting banned on YouTube? It's so simple. Like, these people can make it up. They can be telling the truth. I think there are people out there who really do suffer from this, but we cannot tell. And until there is some indicator that we can tell what you really feel and what your true intentions are, we should be protecting women before we're just protecting nobody.
Right. Well, and once you write it into law, so like if you have a bathroom rule, that's going to apply to everybody. You don't know if they're being honest or not, and it doesn't matter under the law. As long as they're just a male, then not a woman, entering a woman's restroom, and you have a law saying they're allowed to, well, then they're allowed to. That opens the gate for predators. That opens the gate for people who aren't trans, never been trans, never want to be trans. You don't know.
Yeah.
And I have such a big issue with things like that, like especially the bathroom rule in particular. That has existed throughout human history across cultures because there's a biological threat to women, and their threat is that if something happens to them sexually, they run the risk of having a 9-month commitment to a child with genetics that they didn't plan on having it with. That is a danger, not only for the next generation, to them personally, it's a danger on their life. Like, you cannot have a civilized community where you allow women to be endangered biologically.
Yeah. I think I lost my train of thought for a second, but you really did hit the nail on the head when you said that, like, this is, the way that this has been implemented is obviously, like, this is across the board. Like, this isn't something that America made up. And I feel
not
like
Western in particular. No. It is across the board.
I think that activists really hone in on it because they like to make Americans feel bad, or like Western societies feel bad for being repressive or oppressive or whatever crazy word they want to use that day. When in actuality, like, this is just something that has existed across time. And also it's done to protect women. I don't understand this argument that somehow you are more righteous, you are better for not protecting women. Oh my gosh. The sirens for the trans people. Woo, woo, woo. I don't know if y'all can hear that in here, but the sirens are going crazy. Actually, this is my ADD brain going off, but story time. I'm like I hate using this word, literally pull the trigger on me, but like a little triggered being back here because the last time I'm not going to say where we're staying, but the last time I was staying here, I was here for the Daily Caller, my former employer, guys, a banquet for them, and I came home and I got off a street too early from my Uber, just like not knowing where I was or like not knowing what was going on, and I watched someone get murdered in front of me.
Stop it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Midnight. It was the saddest thing. I was crying all night. I didn't make it to work the next day. It was like traumatizing. It happened right in front of me, and it is literally 1 block where we're away from where we're staying. And I'm like,
my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I saw where we were staying yesterday, and I was like, I do not want to come right now. Let me just tell you, I am a little bit triggered. And then it's like the adequate use, like the right usage of this word.
Yes, I think it's allowed there.
I mean,
oh my gosh.
I think this whole video is going to trigger people, but seriously, for real, an actual trigger warning. It's wild. I know, but it's okay. We're good. We're moving forward, not looking back.
You
or out the way.
Tell me that, bro. We were texting.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to freak anybody out, but I did witness a murder here one time. We're in like such a nice part of town. That was like what was so wild about it is like, oh my gosh, like how did that happen here? But, you know, that's just the way of the world and unfortunately the way of DC. Yeah.
All right.
I know. Okay, well, let's get back to our heartland. How about that, okay? Let's move on to this story that's taking place at the University of Kansas. So there is a professor at the University of Kansas who said that men who don't vote for Kamala should be lined up and shot. Let's play that clip.
Guys are smarter than girls. You got some serious problems. That's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
Okay, guys, so I saw this video. I guess would have been 3 or 4 days ago. And I reached out to the lawyers representing this teacher because I knew, the second I saw it, I knew that there would be an organization out there that's saying, this is 100% free speech, and I really want to debate about this. But I'm going to read the statement from that professor's lawyer, Graham Piero with the Fire. It says, in the video, this instructor makes a brief comment about shooting men who will not vote for a woman for president because they think women are less intelligent. To be a punishable true threat under the First Amendment, a speaker must convey a clear intent to commit unlawful violence against a specific individual or group of individuals. That intent must be unmistakable. The instructor's comments in this video does not indicate that he actually intends to engage in violence. He didn't identify a specific individual or a reasonably identifiable group of individuals. I'm going to pause right there. He did say all people that don't vote for Kamala.
That sounds specific to me.
It was specific. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, continuing on, it says, it would be virtually impossible to actually identify all men who do not vote for a female candidate because she's a woman. Plus, both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are expected to receive tens of millions of votes from men across the board, further lending credence to the fact that the instructor wasn't serious. Again, continues, the instructor made a hyperbolic statement expressing his frustration with men who do not support female candidates. The University of Kansas is bound by the First Amendment, which protects jokes, hyperbole, and even more serious advocacy for political violence. We urge the university to reverse any discipline of the instructor for this comment. So I'm going to take us to an article from Higher Ed because it kind of gives a little bit more information on this, because the university is not telling us whether he stepped down himself willingly or whether he was forced out. That is completely unclear here. It just says that the university told Higher Education this man is no longer employed. His name was Philip Lowcock. Lowcock? That's unfortunate.
Yes, it is.
That's a lot of unfortunate things all lined up for this man. Not a good week. But he had his profile removed for his offhand comments. Now, here's why I want to dive into this story is I think it's a cop-out tactic saying that this was a joke. I don't necessarily think it was a joke because you and I say this to my audience all the time, and it's never an insulting thing. But a lot of my audience is, not a lot, but some of my audience is older than 65. Mm-hmm. Their bullshit meter in comparison to ours, generally speaking, is just not as good.
Yeah.
Our bullshit meter as people that have spent our careers, our lives online is very high. And I would say that gives us actually a very good ability to be nuanced in our conversation, because you hear yourself and your own intonation when you're watching and listening to other people, and you're able to relate better. And we can relationally relate to somebody we see on the internet better than an older generation can. It's just the truth. Okay, it's not trying to insult anybody. When I say I didn't catch the joke in it, it wasn't funny. Like, there was nothing about it. I think there is an argument to be made that, like, it was hyperbolic. That's fine. I'm cool with that. This notion that it was a joke is a stupid notion.
I think it's hyperbolic too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you just listen to the clip and roll with that, nothing about that sounds like it's being sarcastic or he meant what he said.
Right, and then he proceeded to say, and he knew what he said was bad in the moment because he proceeded to say, oh, and don't tell the dean.
Yeah,
or, like, make sure you cut
exactly.
this out of the recording. But I don't understand why anybody would say that in these political divisive times. Like, this is dumb. You don't say that in front of all these kids. These kids are, there's bound to be a conservative in that class that is going to be offended by this.
I don't know that he thought there would be. Or maybe he wouldn't have said it. I think especially in these political times, one side is a little bit more protected than the other and gets a little bit brave sometimes. And things like that happen.
Yeah, but I mean, I wrote this down. When a left-wing school admits the actions of a professor are bad, they're probably that bad.
Yeah.
Like, this is an
Remember
institution.
the dean of Harvard?
No.
The dean of Harvard who, like, plagiarized literally
I
everything?
thought you said the demon of Harvard. I'm like,
Oh.
ooh, spooky story, let's go. The dean of Harvard who plagiarized. Yes, Claudine, of course.
So long for that to get exposed, like they didn't know.
Right, but this happened so quickly, which is what leads me to believe that, sure, I guess it was hyperbolic. I can grant Fire and the lawyers that, but
the sentiment is there.
I know, and somebody in my comments, I posted about this video, and one of the commenters said, you know, there is free speech, of course, in this country, and you should not be punished for your free speech, but at the same time, like, there are backlashes at a certain point. Like, you have the right to say it, but, like, should you?
Right, and everything has consequences.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're getting arrested, but it has consequences.
Right, and then at the same vein, it's been rumored, this is a rumor alert, if that's not clear enough, that he did resign. It's unclear right now. I want to report that as fact, but it seems like the university, he had been a professor for quite a while, very well liked, and he decided that it would be best for him to step down from his role, resign, get his full pension, and just go into the sweet night instead of dealing with the consequences of this. And I mean, this is happening mid-October, so this is halfway through the semester for these kids. So it's pretty wild, but I don't think this is the worst consequences that could have come from this.
Not at all. And I know people say it all the time, and it's getting old, but if the shoe were on the opposite foot.
You think anybody would feel sorry if somebody said, what were the words? Let me find the wording. I want to find the exact wording. Said something along the lines of, we can line all those girls up, we'll say, and shoot them. If we were talking about girls not wanting to vote for Donald Trump because he's Donald Trump. What? Oh my gosh. Think about how women reacted when J.D. Vance talked about single cat ladies. You think that women in this country wouldn't throw a fucking riot?
No, it would be unbelievable.
It would be. Oh my gosh. Today's show is sponsored by Freedom 2.0. What's in your water? If it's not Freedom 2.0, it might be time to reconsider. Freedom 2.0's award-winning water goes beyond the bottle with an 8-step filtration process that includes reverse osmosis, UV light treatment, and an infusion of 432 hertz, the body's natural healing frequency. It's not just about hydration, it's about providing your body with clean, pure energy, free from the sugars and additives that other brands like to sneak in. Why settle for anything less than the best? Freedom 2.0 is hydration redefined. Ready to make the switch? Click the link in the show notes and elevate your hydration game today. All right, let's move on to our next story, which is a little bit more legalistic news. So if you have questions, like, feel free to pester me with questions. You guys in the comments, feel free to pester me with questions. I am talking to some interesting characters that are very into kind of the behind the scenes legal issues on all of this. So I will kind of relay their messages to you the best I can as I get them. But this is a new law in Texas. So Texas poll workers now must, it's mandated, show or have people that have non-citizen IDs show naturalization documents if they'd like to vote. So after instructing poll workers last week to give ballots to people who present a non-citizen's driver's license. So you show me a driver's license and it just says like, you can operate a vehicle, but you're not, it's not like a real ID. You can give people those ballots. After that, the Texas Secretary of State updated its guidance to require those voters to also provide proof of naturalization. So you must now show your real ID and proof that you're a citizen if you don't have a real ID. Now, this has been incredibly controversial, but the initial guidance...
It's amazing.
Right? I know. So I'm trying to find the original guidance on this because it was really interesting. I guess it's I guess 2.8, this is where it is, 2.8 million people in the state of Texas have these limited term driver's license or ID cards, and they can be given out. And if an individual presented a limited term non-citizen license and is already registered to vote, the original guidance told poll workers to simply inform the individual that the identification presented suggests that that person is not a U.S. citizen and that non-citizen voting is illegal, and then give them a ballot, even if it's illegal. Do you see what I mean?
Oh.
Yeah. So the difference between what was happening before was, yes, you present your ID, and then the poll worker would say, by the way, it doesn't look like you're a legal citizen. It is illegal to vote on this ballot if you are not a legal citizen.
Okay.
And then you can still hand it to that person. Now, if somebody shows you this ID that doesn't show that they're fully a citizen, the poll worker is now required to sit there and say, hey, like, I need proof of naturalization.
Right.
So I guess my question for you that I want to talk out is, like, should the onus be on the poll worker in that situation? Because I don't think I have a problem with this at all, but there is part of me that's like, these are just volunteers. Like, why is this
I
on them?
completely agree. And you don't know the poll workers personally. You don't know their political bias, what their intentions are. That's a lot to put on volunteers.
Yeah.
That's a lot of trust to put in volunteers. People are fallible.
Yeah.
In what other country do they let you vote without an ID?
No, I know. This
You
is
can't
like,
do anything without an ID.
yeah, this is such a unique American conversation to be having. of
Like, no other country could comprehend what is happening here.
I don't know, maybe Canada. They're a bunch of frou-frous. Yeah.
that's true.
Sorry, Homeland.
Trudeau. Yes.
Yeah, I know. I love calling him Tampon Trudeau because he is. And I was writing in my notes, like, the idea of deterrence is a good thing. Like, the initial guidelines are not the worst thing in the
Right,
world,
I
right?
agree.
It's deterring people. Hey, just so you know, you're about to get in a fuck ton of trouble
Yeah.
if you do this. I get that. I just don't know where the line is. I really don't. It's like I'm toggling between, like, yes, deterrence is good, but not good enough. But also, you know, this is not something that should be put on poll workers. But at the same time, I'm like, I guess if I have to pick one of the two, because that's what I'm presented with a binary choice. Which one do you pick?
The first, I guess. Because poll workers are fallible human beings.
I kind of think I'm leaning towards the poll worker one, though, because yes, they're fallible, but, like, we're talking about an election where once the ballot is in, and once this is in, like, the fix is kind of in. You can't change anything after that ballot is cast for probably Kamala. I'm not to say people aren't illegally voting for Trump too. Like, that can very well happen.
Right.
Too. But most likely, if we're looking at the demographic and we're generally making
Statistically, it would be for the
statistically,
Democrat candidate, yeah.
smart decision. You're looking at that and you're like, okay, cool. This is what's happening. You can't undo that, really. Like, we're not looking at this and the very next day going, oh yeah, that's like, it's crazy. And that's going to bring us to our fifth story, because this all kind of ties in really well. So let me just get into our fifth story, because these tie in so well. So, like, similar to everything that we're seeing with, you know, voting rights in Texas, and even though Joy and I disagree, maybe a little, not even disagree, this question about whether we should be certifying elections immediately has come up time and time again. And we've talked about it on the show, guys. I think it was maybe about a month ago that I talked about how Republicans did in 2020 the crappiest job of preemptive legalese I've ever seen in my life. They are bitching and complaining, like, well, we lost, because you sat around and waited.
They let it happen.
Yes, you kind of let it happen. And of course, Democrats should be on the hook more for doing the bad things. But at the same time, like, letting it happen is also part of the issue.
It's like, what side are you on?
Yeah, no, I know. Let's be preemptive about everything. And so they have been better. They're not good, but Republicans have been better preemptively. And so they filed a lawsuit saying that, this was in Georgia, that counties don't have to certify elections.
Yeah.
A Republican filed a lawsuit saying, I don't think I should have to certify the election if I believe that there is foul play. And that's not to say, like, I just want to stop the election to stop it. Like, if you have legitimate claim and legitimate reasons. And on Monday, so this would have been October 14th, a judge ruled in Georgia that election officials must certify election results, even if the results show more votes than voters. Like, what? So he ruled that No election superintendent, so these are people that certify the elections in each county, may refuse to certify or abstain from certifying election results under any circumstances, even if there is, quote, nonsensical results. Okay?
Nice.
And when I look at this, I'm like, there's no point. Like, think about how much effort goes into electing these commissioners, right? Or these people that certify the election, right? What a waste of everyone's collective time if we're just going to ask them to do the job that a robot could do. If the job is just to say, yes, I approve that, congrats. Fucking ChatGPT could do that. Like, this is not a novel concept. What's the point of these people even getting elected in the first place? Like, to make people feel good?
Yeah, you would think. I think the scariest part about all of that is that this is not hidden. I'm sure this was happening before, but this is out in the open, and they're letting it out in the open.
Yeah.
That's what's scary. Before they were trying to hide it. Now that they're not even trying to hide it, that's when you should be scared.
Yeah.
When there's no attempt to conceal the totalitarian control of what's happening, that this is my way, this is how it's going to go, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And they're okay with saying it, that means there's a lot of power there.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now the judge who was on this. Of course, this is happening in Fulton County, which if anybody can recall, that's where Fani Willis or Fanny or whatever the fuck her name is. But I'm just so curious, like, when he got elected and who he got elected by, or like, is he elected? Was he appointed? I don't even know. Oh, he went to Harvard Law School, so probably an interesting character. I don't know, just by looking at him.
Yeah.
Just by looking at him.
Doesn't shock me.
I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions. He very well could be a conservative. You know, you saw that conservative, what was his name? I'm not really getting much information about this guy. But he was a Federalist Society judge that ended up kind of going with Fannie Willis.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Ballotpedia. Let's see. I mean, you got to be pretty... Oh, first appointed by a Republican.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. He also presided over a grand jury investigation of possible criminal interference in the 2020 election. So he was the judge that oversaw the grand jury before the information went to the actual judge, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, so
Wow.
he's really intrinsically involved in all of this. He kind of knows.
See,
all
this is
of
what
it.
I'm saying. This isn't Democrat versus Republican anymore. This is for the people versus that machine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Republicans in that machine.
There are. I mean, that's where we get the term rhino, obviously. This is not like
the
a
Cheneys,
novel.
the Bushes, him.
Yeah, no, for real. The other judge that was involved in this whole
I know.
auctioneering thing. All right, well, for time's sake, I want to move on to one of our fan favorite segments, which is called Random Racism.
Random Racism!
I found this story, and the way I'm gonna try to just tell it to you factually.
Okay.
I can't stop laughing. I literally can't. It's really hard for me. Okay. So there's a police department in Maryland that has to revise all of its testing processes to ensure that Black and female applicants pass their test at the same rate as white and male applicants. Not because the police department is waking up one day and going, you know what, I want to be woke and make sure that we have perfect parity in our testing practices.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Department of fucking Justice determined that the Maryland Department of State Police was discriminatory because the written test to become a police officer is allegedly easier for white people to pass, and the physical test was easier for men to pass. Okay, so here's it's so painful. It doesn't take into account, from my understanding, like any understanding of like maybe there are more white men applying for this. Like, we're not talking about like
Right.
a 50-50 split. There are more white men and more white people / men applying to this position because there are statistically more white men in this country. Like, I don't understand why this is hard for people to grasp, but let me tell you about the test, okay? Because I was like, okay, maybe this test sucks ass. Maybe it does. Oh, the test.
Maybe there's something wrong with the questions.
Yes. No. The test asks questions at an elementary school level and asks questions about basic math, reading comprehension, and a section about telling time. You need to get a 70% to pass. on elementary school, rudimentary school.
So is there like a specific question that like is unfair based on race?
No, it's not. It's just like this idea that because the outcomes are not equal, it must be the test and not the individual having any autonomy over themselves.
See, I'm curious to figure out, like, if you showed the general public, like, that exam and asked them, should we make this easier so that it can have, more racial fairness, what are they going to say?
It's, like, inherently pretty fucking racist, if I do say so myself, to say, like, oh, like, hearing it out loud, okay? And I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying this is wild to say for the Department of Justice to say, women aren't passing the physical test at the same rate as men.
Right.
Because men tend to be stronger than women. But Black people can't pass the written test as much as white people can. For what reason? Like, tell me this confounding reason. Because to me, that speaks to, like, I'm sure there's going to be some workaround of, like, oh, well, the Black education system or something wild like that, when in actuality, like, what you are saying, what the Department of Justice is saying here is that, like, Black people can't be as smart as white people. I'm lost. These are elementary school questions. By the time you're applying to be a police officer at 18, this shouldn't be problematic for you.
No, it shouldn't. That's why affirmative action is so racist. It's saying that, oh, this person of this race isn't as smart as this white person or this Asian person, so we're going to help them out. And then they're never going to know if they made it because of their abilities or their race.
Yes.
Like, are you kidding?
I would actually be offended. I'm so interested to hear what you think of this, because I would be offended if I got the job because I was a woman.
Of course.
Like, incredibly offended. I want to get it because I'm the best candidate. And I don't understand, like, how women, like, any person of color goes through life and is, like, excited that they got something because of something that was out of their control.
What they look like.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't get that. Like, I'm not excited to get something because I look a certain way. I don't get that. Do I have understanding that somebody looking, like, to your point earlier in our conversation about, like, the in-groups and the out-groups, is there a hiring manager that I think will maybe look like me or look like someone else, and so they'll connect more?
And sure, there's bias there.
I'm okay with that and understanding that, oh, I had a really good connection with this person. That probably helped me get hired.
But turning it into a general rule is robbing people of agency or their sense of agency. That's a really big problem in a society where you're telling them that if they work hard enough, they can be anything they want to be. You are saying that, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah, no.
And if people don't believe it, that's not what's going to happen. And they're going to end up in the same place that they started out and feel sorry for themselves. And then there's no movement.
No.
That's a problem.
Oh, I think it's incredibly problematic. I don't understand how this is even a thing, how the Department of Justice thought that they could just get away with this, and that state police departments are actually being forced to comply with. Like, this is fucking nuts.
I don't want the criteria for my police officers to be lower.
Someone needed to say this. Oh my God.
That's crazy.
I actually, now that I'm thinking about this, so my now father-in-law is a cop in the Metro Detroit area. He used to be, like, near Detroit. Oh, no, now he works in, like, a small town where I believe, like, there's more cows than there are people. So he loves his job.
Good for him.
He's got it cushy now.
He deserves it.
He does deserve it because he worked so hard. But I love sending him things like this and seeing what he has to say, because I want to get a copy of their police test and just see what it is, because I'm sure
I want to know the questions. Like, I want to look through it.
Well, one of them says specifically that the question asks about telling time.
Like, what do you mean?
I'm wondering if it's, like, I'm trying to be serious, but it's just such a stupid concept. Like, is it just military time? Like, I guess I would struggle with that.
That confuses me.
Yeah. I guess, like, do they speak in military? I don't know. I really want to call Chris and ask him, but I don't know. I don't get it. Okay. For brevity's sake, let's move on to our next segment, which, another fan favorite. Is it real or is it satire?
Is it real or is it satire? You cannot be serious!
So, obviously, Kamala Harris has become, like, the butt of every single freaking joke in the world, and I'm obsessed with it because
thank goodness
she's she's easy to make fun of. Yeah. And I will say Trump is pretty easy to make fun of, too. It's because they have these, like, very specific isms. We all have our isms, but, like, they're so distinguished with her, like, cackling laugh and all of her weird stuff.
Ugh, it's painful.
I know. But this one woman, her name is Sienna Hubert Ross. She's gone viral on TikTok for poking fun of Kamala Harris. Let's watch that.
I'm Kamala Harris, and today I'll be showing you my old John.
Wow.
Yeah, Mickey D's. We all love a Whopper.
Did you work at this location?
No, but it still signifies 1 in 3 Americans will work at McDonald's at least once in their life. It is America.
Okay.
Let's go get a Whopper or something.
Yeah.
What do you like? Extra onion?
I like some fries.
Oh my God, it smells like home. Well, they didn't have these when I worked here. I don't know how this works. I don't like that at all. And under my rule, there'd be no more.
My big question for you when it comes to videos like this is like, what do you make of something like this going viral on TikTok, which is predominantly used by people like us,
Yeah,
our age, which are predominantly liberals, but this goes really viral.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
But it's not just TikTok though; it's like SNL too. SNL has been
Recently, yes.
ripping her.
Yes.
It's so funny. What does that mean to you? Like, what do you think of when you see this?
Well, not to get a little bit too crazy here, but I don't know if this is good or bad, because the Democrat machine kind of is like the authoritarian class, and when it starts to turn on itself, what is it saying? Is it handing the presidency over to some, like the last time this happened when they started turning on their candidate, we got a new candidate.
Yeah.
Is there somebody else in the lineup? Or is it an election that's going to be turned over to Donald Trump and then they're going to do something to interfere with that? We know that there's people out to get him. There's been a lot of attempts on his life.
Yeah.
Like we're up to what, 3 now? And there are more
We're
people.
gonna do 2.5.
2.5.
The third one's not super confirmed.
Right. But I am not clear on what the intention is, because every time they start going after their own, it seems like there's more to it. I don't know what that more to it is right now.
I know. It's like, it's hard because I know that usually something that brings me brevity and happiness is always deeply underlined with something awful that I don't want to happen. Like, they're distracting me from something, and I'm kind of like one of those ADD people that's like, la 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 la, follow the
That's what
butterfly.
happens. Like, watch this hand while this one is in the dark making moves. You don't know what's happening.
Exactly. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the reason why I'm looking isn't just because it's like la 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 la. Like in my heart of hearts, oops, sorry, I just like smacked my my mic, but in my heart of hearts, I'm like, oh my God, I miss the days when we could like poke fun of both sides.
I know.
You know, I think that's what it is. It's like this inherent nostalgia that people over the age of like 25 feel right now. It's like,
and you know what? Comedy is coming back.
It is. Oh my
Shane
God.
Gillis.
Have you ever heard of Jeff Dye? He's been on my show before.
No.
Oh my God, he's a hoot, and he has a new Netflix, or not Netflix, but comedy special coming out on a streaming service, I believe, and then it comes out November 1st, I think. I don't know if I'm making this announcement. Shit, I shouldn't say this, but it's coming out soon, and I was talking to him, and we're going to do some collab work and whatnot, but
That's awesome.
it is another one. He's just risen through the ranks now because he's just not afraid to say whatever.
Good.
Yeah.
People are so starving for that now. I think just because we have had just such an onslaught of you can say this, you can't say that. If you do, everyone and their mother is coming for your throat, and they're over it.
I know. Well, we're over it, and I'm over this episode and this outfit. I need to change and go look pretty for our not gala, what the fuck? I'm so dramatic. Like, event tonight, whatever you call it.
I don't even know what we're doing.
I don't know.
I'm just happy to be here.
If that's not the story of my life. Anyway, if people are interested in following you because you did such a wonderful job on today's show, where can they find you?
I'm at Joy Backless Cruz everywhere except TikTok. Joy Backless Cruz got taken down. She is no longer. It's Joy Backless Cruz back up now.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to link them all in the comments. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you for a regular show tomorrow on YouTube, Rumble, and X, and Facebook. Hopefully X, you guys. X has not been working for me. It does not want to upload every time I upload something. I don't know. It's been very interesting. But anyway, tune in on all the channels. If you're an Apple and Spotify listener, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you here next time. Bye. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, based apparel linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.